Good morning, Maranatha. 6:40, 6:50 a.m. And I'm going to do my rehearsal today. See how it goes. It's not a. Well, let's just see how it goes. I don't want to ruin it or jinx it. Okay, here we go. This is my presentation. So I'm going to just see where it needs work. Okay, here we go. King David was anointed king when he was X years old. So I have to, to find the age. How old was David when he was anointed? That's a question that needs answering. King David and anointed. And where's the verse to back that up? Because I can't just use my opinion. Okay. It says that when he was anointed, he was. Oh no, that's not it. It says he was 15 years old when he was anointed initially, but he wasn't king until he was 30. So how do we prove this, that he was actually 15? I know he was younger. Obviously he was younger, but how young? Okay, it says here 1 Samuel, which is 1 Kings, and the old Bibles. There was no Samuel before. 1 Kings 17 and verse 34. Okay, I guess that's a they call him a youth. A youth. Doesn't say how old he was, just that he was a youth. It says, for he was a lad. Okay, what is the biblical definition of a lad? Well, I would say younger than 20. Because a man that goes out to battle is at least 20 years old. A lad will not fight in battle. They will not be enlisted in an army. So you can bet he was at least 12, maybe 19. I don't know, but people say 15. On Google, at least they say 15. He was young. After 15 years, he got to be king. Okay, how do we know that? It was 15 years. Where does it say that? Between the age of 15 and 19. Okay, so it's an estimation. It's an estimate. 2 Samuel 5:4. Okay. Which is 2 Kings. Yeah, 2 Kings 5:4. David was 30 years old when he began to reign. So I don't need to quote that. I did my fact checking. So he truly was 30 when he became king. So King David was anointed king when he was a lad. A lad. Then he had to wait for his turn. Then he had to not only wait for his turn to be king, to be the real, not the real king, but to take his throne. He had to wait for Saul to, I don't know, die maybe. He had to wait because Saul was still alive. So he had to wait for Yah's blessing. He had to wait for Yah to install him. He couldn't do it himself. Couldn't just usurp the throne. Not only that, he was a fugitive. Saul had a bounty on his life. Pretty sure there was a price on his head. Yeah. Probably was a bounty for years. So for at least 10 years, he was in this state of purgatory. Was in this precarious situation, let's say, for finally taking the throne. But he took the throne, finally being, before he could officially rule over Israel. He turned 30 years old. 30 years old, or his 30th year? That's an interesting question. David was 30 years old, so he was 30. So it seems whether it was his 30th year or he completed 30 years, he was 30. When he was 30, say when he was 30 years. That's 30th year or whatever, but 30. I'm kind of tempted to look up extra biblical sources. I don't know if Jasher has King David in there. Jubilees is the little Genesis, so probably won't have him there. So let me see where the book of Jasher is around here. I think it's not in reach. No. Oh, here it is. It's right there. Okay. Let's see. King David, is he here? I think it's Moses only. Moses, Jacob. I mean, obviously Israel is before Moses. Oh, Joshua. Oh, Joshua is after Moses. Okay, King David is not in the book of Jasher. So that rules that one out. There's a book called the Book of... I read it one time in this channel. I forgot the name of the prophet. Anyhow, it does talk about Solomon and King David. It might say the age there. It might. But I don't know. There's not really a source that says how old he was when he was anointed. There's only estimations. So how old is a lad in Israel? Yeah, so it says here the age associated with conscription in the army was 20, Numbers 145. So let's look at that. That gives us a way to prove it. Numbers 145. Okay. So it says 20 in the Masoretic. In the Septuagint, it says they're 20 years old. So it is 20. So he was under 20. And probably wasn't 19, because 19 is like, oh, you're pretty much not a lad anymore. Some say even 10 to 12 years old. I mean, that kind of makes sense, because that truly is a lad. Maybe it's before puberty, because once you hit puberty, you kind of are a man. And some cultures, they do the bar mitzvah at 13. I don't know if that's scriptural, but anyhow, that is an important time, in whether you're male or female. How old was David? Okay, here we go. Most scholars believe he was between 8 and 15. He was the youngest of 8, which we know 3 were old enough to fight in the army. The youngest of the 3 eldest had to be 20, assuming they had a son every year. David could have been 15. So, right here, how old is a boy considered a man in Jewish culture? Because I might have a bit of an idea if we look at that. Because the bar mitzvah, we have to look at. I think we need to analyze the bar mitzvah a little bit. It says 13, so he could have been younger than 13, but he's not a little kid. I mean, he's not a little 5-year-old, that's for sure, but he's not a teenage. Maybe he was a teenager. I don't know. I mean, if he was good looking, probably was at least 10. I don't know if he could be 8, maybe 10. I don't know, but anyway, he is younger than 20, it's for sure. I would probably even say maybe 17. The oldest was probably 17 in my mind. One becomes an adult at 13. So 20 years of age is when they do the census and they count you. But when you look at the Judeo and Islamic culture, a boy is considered a man once they hit puberty, I believe. So age 20 for sure. He's younger than 20. So he waited at least 10 years. I'm going to put here, how old is a boy considered a man in Islam? See, cultures, in terms of recognizing manhood, you go for that, you go through a rite of passage. But I think common sense would dictate, once you hit puberty, you become a man. I remember when I turned 13, I kind of felt like a man. I was taller, I was stronger. You have all these, emotions and impulses, and you're ready to procreate. You're essentially, you have your seed ready to go, and you could have kids essentially. So I don't think he, you know what, are you a lad when you hit 13 and you look like a man and maybe you grow a beard? Maybe he probably wasn't 13. He could have been, yeah, maybe he was 8 to 12. Maybe it was 8 to 12. Because otherwise, if he was a teenager, people would have given him a chance against Goliath. They would have said, you know what, maybe you could. You look like a man, but since he didn't look like a man, he looked like a boy. 8 to 12, probably. Yeah, makes sense. So if he was, let's say, 8, he waited 22 years. But if he was 10, 20 years, if he was 12, then 18 years. But looking at historical figures like Abraham, Moses, and so on, they usually waited 20 years before, when they had a transition in their life, Abraham and whatever, they would have to go somewhere for 20 years. So maybe he waited 20 years from being anointed. Makes sense. So maybe he was 10. Kind of makes sense. Um, so yeah, in Islam it is 12. And in Judaism it is 13. 12, 13. Actually, it says here 13 as well. So you can see how the cultures are very much similar in that way, where a man and a woman, or I should say a boy and a girl, are now recognized more closer to a man and a woman, being a particular, when they reach a threshold, a rite of passage at 13. Once they have their menstruation, and the boys have their, the testes and all that, and descending and all. So let me just read this a little bit more. The sensation for entering puberty may start at 12 for boys and 9 for girls. So yeah, 12 might be, yeah, some. I remember in grade 8, there were some of my classmates that kind of went to puberty a little early. So they were tall, and not that they grew a beard, but they were kind of, you wouldn't say they were little boys anymore. So you know what, 12 might be the cutoff. So I'm going to extrapolate and say maybe 8 to 12 kind of makes sense. Puberty is a big change. So I'm going to say definitely, yeah, younger than 20. But I'm going to speculate probably was 10. Probably was 10 because 20 years is a significant number in terms of biblical figures waiting for transition period. So I'm going to say, let's see, 20 years in the Bible. Moses, Abraham, and Joseph, and so on. So Moses, Abraham, they had to wait 20 years, I think. Moses definitely waited 20 years multiple times, maybe even 40 years. Okay. All right, I'm going to say Moses, Midian. He was there for 20 years. So I think 20 is a significant number. So it says Moses and Midian. So Exodus 2:11. Let's see if this makes sense. Yeah, this is only the introduction. I'm just trying to get my facts straight. I don't spend too much time on this, but I think it's important to get this right. At the length of time, Moses, having grown, went out to his brothers. So it doesn't say he's grown, doesn't say his age. So the assumption is he's 20. But he goes to Midian. And how long was he there? It skips a big timeline here. Like a lot happens in Midian. Here it is. Okay. How old was Moses when he returned to Egypt? That's a good question. When he returned to Egypt. It's not stated. It's given as 40 in the New Testament. Well, how did they know that? How did they know he was 40? Interesting how they, they wouldn't say a lie in the New Testament. They wouldn't say, oh, he probably was. They'll actually give you they want to be as accurate as possible. They don't want to give you inaccuracies. So it says Acts 7. According to Acts 7, it gives you the age of Moses. In verse 23. When he was approaching the age of 40, okay, he was approaching the age of 40, so that's when he fled, around that time. And 40 years later, so he was 80. Wow, okay. So according to Acts, he was approaching 40. And that first, so 40 years had elapsed in Midian. According to the book of Jasher, how old was Moses? Moses that's in the Exodus. So they wouldn't be in Moses would not be in the book of Jubilees. Let's just see what Jasher says before I settle on an age here. The third year from the birth of Moses. Okay, so he's 3 years old here. Moses was 18. So Acts says he was 40, approaching 40. Here it says he was 18 in Jasher. But yeah, he's approaching 40. When you're 18, you're approaching 40. But I wouldn't say he's 30. It says he's 18 here. And he became king of Africa, apparently. That's how he met his wife, the Ethiopian. Moses was 27 when he began to reign over Cush. 27 plus 40. That would be 67. So he was there for quite a while. But it doesn't talk about Jethro, though. That's interesting. Maybe Jethro was part of this chapter of his life. I don't know. So 67 years old. So he reigned over Cush. Okay. According to Jasher, at least. So when did Moses come back? Moses was still king in Cush, according to Jasher. The 40th year of the reign of Moses. So, how old was he when he started? 20 what? He was 18 when he fled from Egypt, according to Jasher. And then we became king over Cush. 22nd year of the reign of Moses. Well, that's not it. '27. Okay, so if you ruled for 40 years, according to there, the 67. Yeah, 67. So what happened after that? So Moses went out. Okay, he left Cush. He went home and ceased to reign over Cush. He was 66 years old, and Moses went to Midian, for he was afraid to return to Egypt. Okay, so he was 66 when he went out of Cush, according to Jasher, and then he was there for how long? 66 plus 14, so 14 years, I would think, right? So if it says 14, then this kind of matches up with the Tanakh, or the Torah. So Moses did not go to Egypt yet. I'm still reading on here. So much going on. Moses was feeding the flock of Ruel the Midianites. So there's quite a lot in Jasher that is not included. If this is true, that is. And then he saw the burning bush. Doesn't say his age yet. Okay, well, it's hard to say how old he was. So I don't see any age here. have to turn the pages. Okay. This is an old book. All right, is my battery low? What's going on here? Okay, it's not low. Came to pass. How old were you, Moses? How old were you, David? Really, it's kind of getting off track here. All right, Moses was confined in the dungeon for 10 years. So if he was there at the age of 60, how old was that? 60. So he started reigning at 27 or so, then he was there for 40, so 66. And then he was there for 10 years, so 76. So he was at least 76 to 80 when he returned to Egypt. Hadad reigned over Edom for 48 years. Okay. I think the probably the best parallel to King David is the son of David, Yeshua HaMashiach. I can never get the ch to when you're not never. How old was Yeshua when he was in the temple? It actually tells us. The child. It actually tells us the age. So I think he was probably that age or younger. Because if he was actually a lad and they describe him as a lad, then if it says he was a man, or not really a man, but kind of an older boy, then it would give us an idea. Because if he was a lad, King David was described as a lad, and he was already anointed at that point. Luke 2, verse 40. Okay, here it is. Joseph and Mary, the little boy grew strong. Every year they went to the Passover. He was 12 years old. After the feast was over, the boy, so he was 12 and a boy. So I'm going to say 12, at least 10, maybe 12. That makes sense. Because if he's considered a boy at 12, not a man, then King David probably was 10 to 12. Otherwise, at 13, maybe he would not be considered a boy anymore. He's right at the threshold of becoming a man. So let's just say it was 12. King David was 12. 12 plus 18 is 30. So you had to wait at least 18, maybe 20 years. So that's an estimation I'm going to make to my own hazard. Bar mitzvahs are 12, 13. So he is between the age of 10 to 12. Even King David, timeline, 1 Samuel 16, 13. Let's look at that one more time. Maybe it does give us a little bit of an idea. It took so long on this intro, like 30 minutes, just to get the age right for Samuel 16 and verse 13. Very goodly to behold, beauty of eyes. So would you say this of a 10-year-old, of an 8-year-old? That he, I mean, yeah, there's some good looking little kids. Like, you can be a handsome lad. But to say he had beautiful eyes and very goodly to behold, that's kind of, will be a little creepy. But it says goodly in the sight of Yah. Okay, that's different than just being attractive. It's not that kind of thing. Do you have any more sons? There is a little one. We call him a little one, the youngest. He tends the flock. So he was anointed then, but then there was still time elapsed here to the point that he's still considered a lad when this thing happens with Goliath. So it might have been 2 years from that moment. It could be 2 years, and he's still considered a lad. So it kind of makes sense for him to be 10. Because it's not like the next day Goliath. No, it could have been months, could have been years. But unless it gives us an actual time frame. So he was anointed here, and they sent him to Saul. The spirit of Yah departed from Saul. It could have been 2 years later. Really don't know, or a year later. But I don't think it was like the next day. It's not like the Bible's fast forwarding time. Like the next day you're anointed, and then on Tuesday. So on Sunday he was anointed. Monday he went to Saul, and Tuesday Goliath. No, I don't think that's how it happened. Probably was a month, maybe even years between these events. That makes more sense to me. Therefore, perhaps he was 10 years old. It says he was a lad at this point. And it calls Yeshua, a Mashiach, a lad, a boy, at 12. So once you turn 13, you're no longer a boy. But at 20, you are considered a man to fight in war. But at 13, you're not considered a boy either. You're kind of in between. You're in between an adolescent, they say nowadays. You're in transition to being a man. Whereas in some cultures, like the Islamic culture, you are considered a man. And a girl is considered a woman. And in some cultures, even back in the maybe 1800s, a girl could marry and a boy could marry at 13. They could start a family. Like they could literally just get married and have kids at 13, 14, 15, 16, right? That wasn't unusual back then because culture was different and life was different. Kids started working a lot younger. So I'm going to make an assumption here, a bold assumption, at least 18 years. Say at least 18 years. He was anointed king when he was a lad, which I assume, my estimate is 10 to 12. Since Yeshua HaMashiach was considered a lad at 12, a boy. So King David, or I should say David at that time. I could call him David the Christ. That's actually not, it's not blasphemous because Christ means anointed. So David the Christ, again, means anointed one. So I'm going to start over. Okay, here we go. Okay, King David was anointed king when he was just a lad. My estimate is 10 to 12 years old. Because in Islamic culture and Jewish culture, You have your bar mitzvah at 12, 13, and you're considered an adult essentially at that point. But you are not considered ready to fight on the battlefield till you're 20 when they do the census. So he was certainly younger than 20. So he was anointed king when he was 10 to 12 years old. Uh, also, also uh, Jesus, Yeshua, Joshua, the anointed one, was considered a boy also at the age of 12. So David, the Christ, with the anointed one, had to not only wait for Yah to install him, he had to wait. So he had to wait. He couldn't just usurp the throne. But not only that, but he was a fugitive. David was a fugitive, as King Saul had a bounty on his head, or at least, when did that start? When he had a bounty on his head? Well, in any case, we don't know how long that was. I've looked up so many things, but I'm just going to say at least 18, maybe 20 years he had to wait. He was in this precarious situation, transitory time, before he could officially rule over Israel when he turned 30. So Joseph also waited for many years in prison before being promoted. I don't know if we know how it, but I feel like I've been waiting just to get to this message. So you know what? I'm going to skip over Joseph just for the sake of time. And I'll say that Yah himself has been patient with us ever since the fall of Adam and Eve. So that's at least, depending on what calendar you're looking at least 5,700 years, okay, since the creation of Adam. Exodus 34, verse 6, lists one of the attributes of Yah, which is what I'm speaking about today. So let's look at that. I'll just type it into my message so I don't have to turn to it to save time. So 34:6 says here, and Yah passed before his face, Moses' face, and proclaimed, Yah Elohim, pitiful and merciful, long-suffering and very compassionate and true, keeping justice and mercy for thousands, taking away iniquity and unrighteousness and sins. And he will not clear the guilty, bringing the iniquity of the fathers upon the children. I'm just going to stop there at verse 7. So 6 and 7, but I'm going to stop at so long suffering is the one we're looking at. Maybe I'll just read verse 6. Just, you know what, I should say 7, just because it's not complete, but not all the guilty part there. Okay. So 7th of 9 fruit of the Spirit. In English, it is long suffering. In Hebrew, Arekh, Hebraic understanding of these fruit of the Spirit. Understand the Hebraic let's understand these from a Hebraic perspective. Just to understand these fruit of the Spirit from a Hebraic perspective. Because the Bible is written in Middle Eastern culture for Middle Eastern people. Not saying they're superior. I'm just saying that's just a fact, and that's an agrarian society, and in a lot of ways we should be closer to how it was in the scripture in terms of how people related to each other, in terms of work, how they treated animals, the land, how they dealt with each other in business dealings. Um, so yeah, Hebrew for Christians says uh, regarding this says Arekh Af means, okay, let me see. How do I? Hebrew for Christians says Arekh means long, says the word, says Arekh means long, and Af means nose. So this means long of nose. Doesn't mean you have an elephant nose. It means the Hebrew idiom and means long of nose. It is a Hebrew idiom used to picture the slow venting of air through the nostrils. Like that. Okay, so also understand a long breath. So it can be understood, can also be understood as a long breath. It's characteristic of somebody who is slow to anger, which is characteristic of someone who is able to delay their anger. I don't know if it's just delaying an anger. Yeah, I guess it is, isn't it? You're not reacting right away. You're okay. Let me see how this transitions. Can also be understood as a long breath or a sigh, uh, characteristic of somebody who's slow to anger. When you sigh, you're dealing with it. You're long suffering. I'm going to get into the Greek just because it enhances this presentation, not because I want to look at the Greek, but it really adds to this understanding. It says here, macrothumia embraces steadfastness and staying power. If in English we had an adjective, long tempered, as a counterpart. Hold on here. Let's get this font correct. Okay. So it would be long tempered. The counterpart to short tempered. So macrothumia could be called the quality of being long tempered. Again, a quality of God. So your temper is not short. You aren't quick to anger. You're slow to anger. Doesn't mean you don't get angry. It just means you are delaying it until the time is right. Yeah, I think that's how you really put it. Doesn't mean you don't get angry. Does not mean you never get angry. You never get angry, but that you delay it until the time is right. And I don't think it means floating like a volcano either. I think it means that you can be appeased. You can be appeased. If somebody's repentant, your anger will be turned away. So it's also a delay, but it can also mean your anger can be turned away. Can be turned away if the other party is repentant. or if you're just merciful. I mean, if you're even if the even if the other person is not repentant, you can still be merciful to them. So it does not require that they are repentant. But I think the onus is on the one who is long-tempered can extend mercy as well. So I mean, there's so many ways you can do this. Yeah, there's so many ways you can really do this. It doesn't have to be just one. It's not one and done. Okay, so that's just the introduction. One of the first matches, matches. One of the first message. I don't know what a message is. One of the first messages we heard in this when we started these weekly Zoom meetings was the importance of breathing, deep breathing. I mean, is it just breathing? I think it's deep breathing. Wasn't it deep breathing? I'm going to say deep breathing. It can help us to, it can help us in the heat of the moment to stay cool, to stay emotionally, to stay emotionally and mentally even keel. Like it can help us to stay cool in the heat of the moment. It can help us to control our emotions. It can help you control our emotions in the heat of the moment. Yeah, that's pretty good. It can help us to divert our emotions. So one thing to control, but to divert it as well as something else. So not having negative attitudes. Okay, how do I say this? It can help us to divert our emotions, meaning not meaning the negative attitudes of others, meaning the negative attitudes or emotions and emotions of others do not rub off on us. And you can list, a whole bunch of negative emotions, whether it's discontent, complaint, attitude of complaining, uh, of the bias, but report of fear, or think of an angry mob, inciting violence. Think of an angry, violent mob, as we see in a lot of countries. Okay, think of the mob mentality where people find it easier to unite over something they are against or something they hate. Do not follow a mob to evil, Proverbs says. That's God's response to that, as to how should we deal with that kind of attitude. But you can't just take this advice without doing an action, which in my opinion, is taking a deep breath. Do not follow a mob to do evil. Let's see if it actually says that. It is good advice, whether it's in the Septuagint or not, but it's not Proverbs, it's Exodus 23 too. What I think was Proverbs, okay. So I made a wrong assumption there. It's Exodus 23. That's a little surprising, isn't it? Okay, 23. You shall not receive a vain report. You shall not agree with the unjust to become an unjust witness. You shall not associate with the multitude for evil. You shall not join yourself with the multitude to turn aside with the majority so as to shut out judgment. So this is peer pressure that is doing evil, and they're also judging wrongly. So that's Exodus 2, or I should say 23. 23 verse 2. You shall not associate. So it's not, I mean, if you associate with a multitude to do evil, you're not following the multitude either. So it's kind of, it's an umbrella statement that people say it's related to mob rule. And it can be, because it says you don't associate with the multitude for evil. So whether it's associating with them doing something verbal, or they're associating, you're joining with them in your body, and you're leading, or not leading, but you're part of the mob. So it can be in word and in deed. It can just be a group, like say you're a part of a faction, and this faction is known to do crimes. They do criminal activities, and then you're associated with them. Just that association is wrong. You shouldn't even be associated with them. So that is an interesting principle, and that's in Exodus of all places, Exodus 23 2. So do not be associated with the multitude to do evil. Okay. All right. Oh, looks like my computer kind of. So we are about an hour in, and I'm still at the beginning here. So do not associate with a multitude, with the multitude for evil. You shall not associate. You shall not associate. So that is a command. You shall not associate. You shall not associate with the multitude, so with a group, to do evil. So it's for evil. Okay, it doesn't say to do evil. For evil purposes. So that includes words. I think this includes words, deeds, words, actions, and just being a member of a faction that is recognized as being evil in the eyes of God, I have to say, because people have different opinions of what is evil. And because people say something's evil doesn't always mean it's evil. We call evil good and good evil. So. Okay, so that's that. Individually, a long breath can help to overcome the human inclination. Again, outside of peer pressure, a mob scenario. So, in an individual, so outside of peer pressure or a mob, a long breath can help us individually overcome the human inclination. The human tendency to lose our temper. Human nature. Human nature to overcome our human nature to lose our temper, because that's human nature, isn't it? Not everyone has this naturally. I didn't at one point, maybe I did have a bit of a temper, but I learned it just was it's not a win-win. Okay. So the idea implies we're not easily offended by the faults and character defects of others, just as God graciously overlooks our sins in Yeshua. Since long suffering is an attribute of God's mercy, that is a part of his essential character. Um, yeah, I don't know if I should even say that. So we're not easily offended even by the faults and character defects of others, just as God overlooks our sins in Yeshua. He overlooks our sins because of Yeshua. Would you say because of the blood of Yeshua? So the Apostle Paul writes, love is long-suffering, patient. That's in Corinthians. Yeah, let's look that up. I think it's 1 Corinthians 13. It's the memory verse, isn't it? The memory chapter there. Love, 13 or 15. It's one of those. It's 13, okay. Love does not envy. Where's the one where it says love perseveres? Has perseverance, so that's the one. Puts up with everything at his endurance. Okay. So it says love has perseverance, love is kind. Love is not hot-tempered. So I think that's what it is. Verse 5, 13:5. It is not hot-tempered. Okay. 1 Corinthians 13:5. It's not hot-tempered. 1 Corinthians 13:5. Okay. Hot-tempered. So that's the opposite of that is long-tempered. Is hot. All right. Let's see what it says in this translation here. Love is long-suffering and kind. Okay. It's never self-seeking. So it says long-suffering. Never behaves unbecomingly. Never provoked. Okay. Never provoked can mean not hot-tempered. So never provoked could be that. But I mean, you can provoke God. That's the thing. It doesn't mean you can't provoke him. It means he's not hot-tempered. I mean, it says that the wrath of Yah was, how do they say, was burning. But that takes a lot for that to happen. It's not something where he just wants to be hot-tempered. It's because of they've really messed up. So it's not hot-tempered unreasonably. There's a reason for his anger to burn. But it is not hot-tempered or short-tempered. Maybe that is probably a better way to render it, short-tempered. Maybe that's what it is, because if he was short-tempered, I mean, the temper can burn hot. I don't know. Because it says that it's patient, so it's not hot tempered. He's hot tempered, but it's not a hot temper that is just ready to for this. It's not like he's looking for an excuse to just be hot tempered. It takes a lot, so he is patient for sure. Let's see what it says here. Oh, never mind. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna remove this part here. So I'm gonna move this. They overlook their sins. The Apostle Paul wrote, "Love is not hot tempered." I'm gonna put that towards the end. Okay, I'll put that right there at the conclusion. Alrighty. Okay, from Daily Bible Study, it says Arekh it explains Arekh this way. When a well-deserved punishment is on its way, repentance usually persuades God to commute the sentence as served. Explain Arekh like this. I want to use way too many ways, too many times. Word understand is Arekh translates as three attributes in one Hebrew concept. Slow anger, being patient, can be done in the absence of adversity and trials, and long suffering, which implies that there's something being overcome. Whether it is internal, so yeah, this is all-encompassing kind of concept, isn't it? It seems I'm focusing more on the slow to anger part of it, but you can't just be slow to anger and not have patience, and you can't just be patient and not be long suffering. So yeah, you do need all three, don't you? So whether it is internal, whether it is internal, what does that mean? Whether our Arekh app is internal, is internal, like a human being trying to become more patient, or if Arekh app applies more to external, to the external, such as bad events that we have no control over, to how we deal, or to how we deal with the external. Okay, so I think the question is, Our Arekh can be internal. Can be, in my own opinion. I think it still makes sense in my opinion. Obviously, it's my opinion. I'm not going to say it doesn't make sense. No lie. Arekh can be internal, or Arekh can apply more to how we deal with the external. This is my opinion. It's not from a website. Okay. In my opinion, I'll just say in my opinion, Arekh can be internal or it can be external. We are admonished to be slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen. That's an important scripture to look up to. Be slow to anger, slow to speak. So where is that found? I'm gonna look that up too. Yeah, I'm going to keep going until I finish to the end, and then I'll do a rehearsal video. So this is a rehearsal slash editing, and we're going to time it. So James 1:19. James 1. Where's the book of James, or the book, the letter? Where is that? It's such a small section, it's easy to skip over it. Revelation, okay. We've got John. We've got Jude, I think, is Jude. Is it Jude? Yeah, Jude. Who's before Jude? Peter. Oh, so I don't have a James in here. Hebrews. Peter. So is James after Hebrews? Or is it before Hebrews? Timothy? Titus? Hebrews. Well, there's no James. This Bible does not have James in it. Preface? Preface? I have no James. Luke? So James is after Acts in this version here. So Acts and then James. It's a hard one to find. Okay. It's by chronological order. That's why it's going like that. That's why it's ordered this way. Written around 44 AD, probably. 119. Mark this. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry. So James 1:19. Okay. James 1:19. And I think James is towards the end in most Bibles. Yeah, it's after Hebrews in most Bibles, except for that Westcott and Hort. So 1:19 says, you may be certain of that. Of what? What does he say? Every good legacy, every complete gift is from above, comes down from the Father of the celestial lights. What does that mean? In whom there's no variation or shadow of change. So he's the Father of the sun and the moon. He deliberately brought us into being by means of the truthful word to be some of the first offerings of his creations. You may be certain of that. So this is, be certain of this. A person is to be quick to anger. I should, not to anger. Quick to listen and slow to speak. Be slow to anger. For a person's anger does not make them right with Elohim. Wow. So you must get rid of all sordidness and bad excesses in a gentle way. What does that mean? What is an excess? Moral filth. Wow. Moral filth. That sounds like a oxymoron. In a gentle way. You must accept the word planted in you that is able to save your souls. Okay, so I'll say 19 to 20. Okay, James 1, 19, 20. James 1, 19, 20. Okay. How does it render it here? Be quick. Be quick. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry. For the anger of man does not forward the righteous purpose of God. So the righteous purpose, you're not helping the plan move along. It does not forward the righteous purpose. Okay, so that's according to Westcott. It's like a preview of what I'm going to be doing after the Old Testament, isn't it? It's a lot of going back and forth. It does not. All right, and then James 1. You know what? I don't know what I'm going to do with the New Testament. It's going to be a tough one. I have like 3 sources to look at. Does not make them right with God. Wow. I never heard it expressed that way. Does not make you right with him. But here it says, does not forward the righteous purpose of God. So which one are you to believe? You're not forwarding his purposes, but you're also not right with him. So it could be you, or it could be you yourself, or it could be something else. I'll look at the 1611 King James. If I can reach it. There you go. Okay. The actual original King James here. Hebrews and James is after that. Okay, it says here in the Old English, and the sound of a trumpet. No, that's not it. Here it is. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man works not the righteousness of God. So it's saying the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of God. So you're not doing what he would do. The wrath of man. It's saying the wrath of man. Does not do the righteousness of God. The Westcott and Hort says that the anger of man does not forward the righteous purpose. So you're not furthering his purposes. Not that you're not doing the righteousness of God. You're not forwarding his purpose. But here, I think it's closer to the King James, and the source translation says, does not make you right with God. I mean, that makes a lot of sense in the source. I mean, yeah, anger can actually work his purpose if you're doing it righteously, but it's the wrath of man. It's like, but how does it describe the wrath of man here? It doesn't say the wrath of man. It says a person's anger does not make them right with God. How is that so? Well, because of what it says, you must get rid of all sordidness and bad excesses. So sordidness, and what does sordid mean? Verse 21 builds on it, doesn't it? So that anger is associated with what comes after. It's not isolated to just, you can say this is indignation, but that's not what it is. Oh, that's not what it is at all. What is sordidness? Sordidness definition. So I have got about 4 hours until I present this. So I'm doing pretty well. So coming together. Sordidness means dirty, mean, and poor. So the quality of being dirty. Lacking virtue. Lacking virtue, okay. So lacking virtue, it's an anger that lacks virtue. Righteous anger, it is unrighteous anger. So sordidness means lacking virtue, which implies this is unrighteous anger, not righteous indignation. And God, Yah demonstrated his Arekh with ancient Israel, and with us every day. Demonstrates that with all of humanity, including us, obviously we're part of humanity, all of humanity every day. Joel 2, verse 6. Okay. Getting towards the end here. Joel 2. If I can find Joel, that's not easy to find Joel. And the Septuagint, it's hard to find Joel. $10.80, okay. The minor prophets are hard to find. They don't even look like the same letters. Joel 2, verse 6 says, before them shall the people be crushed, every face as the blackness of a cauldron. As warriors shall they run. I don't see it here. I don't know where it is. Sound the trumpet. No. Doesn't say. Long-suffering verse is what I'm looking for here. I just stretch my legs out. That's much better. Okay. Appearance like crushed warriors. Weapons, walls, houses shaken. Turn to me with your heart with fasting. Rend your hearts. Yeah, so this is kind of like in the same vein as Exodus, where it describes his traits. It's going to omit that, not because it's not true, it is true, but it's just repetition. It's kind of, it is a little redundant for this presentation in terms of the length, because I only have X amount of minutes. So I can't go into a really, really deep presentation, unfortunately. That's just the way it is. Okay. This camera keeps going up. I don't know. Keeps going up. You know, yeah, that's pretty good, right? Kind of like that dramatic light there. Okay, not too dramatic. All right, maybe a little more there. There you go. Okay. 1-3. Nahum 1:3. I feel like it's after Joel. Oh, it's not. Nope. Is it after Amos? Amos? Obadiah? Jonas? Micheas? Micah? Nahum, there it is. 1:3. Yah is long-suffering, his power is great, and Yah will not hold any guiltless. His way is in destruction and in the whirlwind. Wow. That is impressive. Who shall withstand the anger of his wrath? Yeah, no, that's not what I'm looking for. So I'm going to say no, not for that one. Jonah is probably better reference to use. On the 4. After Amos, no, Obadiah. It's after Obadiah. 4 verse 2. Jonas was very deeply grieved. He was confounded, and he prayed to Yah and said, O Yah, were not these my words when I was yet in my land? Therefore I made haste to flee to Tarshish, because I know that you are merciful and compassionate, long-suffering. So that's the key word there. And abundant in kindness, and repented of evil. And now, Yah Elohim, take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. Yikes. So I need to read the full context, because I bring up an interesting point here. So Jonah said, in 3 days Nineveh shall be overthrown, and the men of Nineveh believed, proclaimed a fast. So they fasted. I don't know where I got 40 days from. Where did I get 40 days? I'm going to look it up. I'm going to Google it. This doesn't make sense anymore. How did I get 40 days? Jonah. 40 days. Let's see. Where did I get that number from? The 40 days of Jonah. Jonah 3, 1 to 10. Okay. Let's see what it says here. Where did I get that from? That's interesting. Okay, I'll look it up in the Q Bible, because there seems to be quite a discrepancy here. I'm going to look it up in Q Bible and see. Why does it say 3 days? The Septuagint just says 3 days. But in the Masoretic, it says 40 days. So it sounds like urgency, perhaps. Maybe that's what it stirred up in the. But it's hard to say unless I look it up, and I have to read the whole book, don't I? Just scan over this book. There's only 4 chapters in it. So it says Jonah, chapter 1. Okay. Sent to Nineveh, bewrayed by a tempest, swallowed by a fish. So a great whale in the Septuagint. Okay, so that's chapter 1. Chapter 2 of Jonah, out of the whale. Okay, chapter 3, preach in Nineveh. 3 days' journey began to enter. So in the Septuagint, it says 3 days, not 40. I don't know what to make of that. Because we got 3 days, guys, not 40 days. So they are like, let's get to this. We only got 3 days. Wow. Which recall the 2 witnesses. It says they will preach for 3.5 years. Maybe it's a parallel to that. Okay, so Jonah 4 to 4 1 to 2. That's the end of the that section. 4 1 to 2. I also want to read Jonah chapter 3, just the section where it talks about where they were repenting. Enter 3 days. So 3. Uh, 3 4 to 10. Okay. Jonah 3 4 10. I'm gonna read a big chunk here. I'm gonna look up Jonah 3 days. Why does it say 3 days? I mean, it says it, but it says 3 days. 40. So what's the significance there? Like, well, days. Because when I say 3 days, when I write that down, and I enter that, I get back the 3 days, 3 nights. But it says here in chapter 3, yet 3 days Nineveh shall be overthrown. Nineveh shall be overthrown. Put here, bonus, 3 days. That's a big difference. When you have 40 days, you feel like, okay, that's a month. 3 days, you gotta like pick it up. Okay, so someone asked this question too. Okay, let's see this commentary here. I've got 2 results talking about the 3 days of fasting and 3 days of being overthrown. It says, when Jonah declares the destruction of Nineveh, his words are 40 days. I noticed the Septuagint says 3 days. This seems like a strange transition to make. I'm curious how it occurred. Is there some theologic motivation that would cause the translator to change the length of time from 3 to 40? I assume the Masoretic was primary, but after reading, it says the Septuagint reading is original. Yeah. By Julius Brewer. I'm going to read that too. Is 3 days possibly the original? Is there a plausible explanation why it was changed from the Septuagint? Before the appearance of the Masoretic, at least 3 witnesses attest to the 40-day period. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Cave of Horrors, the Targum Jonathan. These three witnesses provide the backdrop to understand how Jesus of Nazareth may have understood 40 years, and Jonah, since he had compared the destruction. I don't know if that's true about that. 40 years? What? The following comes from the parchment. The Hebrew word for 40 is arba'im, so this is in Hebrew, modern Hebrew, by the way, not paleo. Doesn't look like paleo to me, no. You can actually recognize that it's not paleo, which is interesting. Looks like the more modern Hebrew. It's not Proto-Canaanite. The second fragment, there's no online pictorial image. So this is a Wadi Morubat, dates to the 1st century, but the Septuagint is 300 BC, so it's even older. The 6th century manuscript, the Targum Jonathan. Okay, so this is all Masoretic. Why does the Septuagint indicate 3 days? There's some noteworthy comments. 40 days is the number of probation. Yet 3 days went to some clerical error, as writing Y instead of U. Where is that? Eti something ni pi. That is the Greek Y and U, or shorthand for 3 and 40. Spence Jones suspects this shorthand was misunderstood. Other commentators have suggested he used 40 in a wider literary context, because like Assyria. Yeah, it could be a clerical error. Okay, I'll give him that. Three witnesses mention 40 days. Dead Sea Scrolls. There's a possibility Greek copyists may have misunderstood the Greek letters Y and U, which would be abbreviations for 30 and 40. Yeah, I mean, it does get letters, numbers wrong, the Septuagint, sometimes, so I'm not going to rule that out. Okay, so that, yeah, okay, that's a valid argument. I'm not going to rule that out. Yeah. It's, all right. Jonah, okay. 40 days, okay, the same word is used. There's only 3 days instead of 40. The story moves rapidly, and 3 days are much more in accord with it. Yeah, that actually makes sense too. So he sat down and waited, but how could you wait 40 days? Yeah, that actually makes sense. Because if he goes there and he says, you know, you need to repent because in 3 days it's going to happen. So they possibly fasted for 3 days. But if it said 40 days and they decided, no, we're going to wait, so it means they delayed. So it could mean that they just got on it right away. They believed and they just acted right away. So that makes sense as well. I'm going to save this file if I can. Can I save it? Let's see. This is an interesting text. This actually has a little It has some validity. It's too bad I can't save it as a PDF. That would be nice. Oh, here, downloadable files. Get the PDF. There it is. So this person attests that the Septuagint is the original. So yeah, that does make sense too. They both make sense. The 40 years could be a clerical error, or 40 days versus 30, but it can also make sense because the story is just so immediate. It's like he was there 3 days journey, said, this is going to happen in 3 days, and he waited. He watched. He wouldn't just sit there for 40 days. He's going to really, it is going a bit quick. And they repented right away. They didn't wait 30 days, and then 37th day they decided to, you know what I mean? They did it right away. But if someone says in 40 days this will happen, and then you decide to repent right away, you could have turned right away in day 3. I don't know. So it works either way. But it does make sense. It could be either one. But is it the days that are important, or is it the fact that they repented? Is that more important? That's the argument. I would say it's more important they repented. The time is not as significant. It could be significant, but maybe it's not that significant as we would like to think. Okay, I'm getting blank pages here. Nothing is showing up here. Oh, here. Title page. A critical and exegetical commentary on Haggai, Zechariah. Oh, that's an old book. What year is this from? Is this from? University of Toronto. Doesn't show a year. Oh, here. This could be the year right here on page 9. It's taking a while to load. 1912. Okay. It's about 100 years old. All right. So last article, it says here, how many days did the people of Nineveh fast? What many people call Jonah's fast can be called Nineveh's fast. Excuse me. The Holy Bible does not tell us how many days the people of Nineveh fasted. The reason 3 is written in midnight praises, it is taken from the Septuagint, which states the city will be overthrown in 3 instead of 40 days. In Jonah 3:7, it says they did not eat or drink water, which makes 3 more acceptable than 40. Yeah, that makes sense too. The Hebrew text is the one followed by all the ancient versions except the Septuagint. On the other side, the justification for 40 is God gave them time to think, reject, take counsel, return to him. It is clear that every Ninevite who heard repented and started fasting, even before the news reached the king. And it says, yeah, that's a good point too. I didn't even realize. Oh, yikes. I didn't realize that either. All right, so we're going to 3. Let's look at that. The men of Nineveh believed Elohim, proclaimed a fast, put on sackcloths, From the greatest of them to the least of them, the word reached the king of Nineveh. Yeah, they did it right away, and then the word reached him. So it was like a grassroots movement. They were like, let's do this now. And then the king found out about it, that they were fasting. So it wasn't an official decree. The people did it. They were moved. And then the proclamation was made. Let us not take... So, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. It's not really definitive, is it? It's interesting. Those are interesting observations, that they did this on their own without the king's proclamation. The proclamation came way after. Okay. All right. So that's its own issue altogether. Is it 40 days or 3 days? And there are differing opinions on that. And then it's not Septuagint is not the most reliable in terms of numbers. Not all the time, especially when it comes to ages, ages of people and all that. It does insert 100 here and there, so it throws things off. But when you roll out the 100, it is more accurate. But here it's not talking about 100; it's talking about 40 or 3. So why would they make an error with that? I mean, it could be an error, could be. But for Jonah to wait, I mean, he did wait. He sat there and he waited, didn't he? Let's look at that. So I want to see, did he actually sit down and wait? Because if he did, then that would give us an idea that, how could you wait for that long? Why would he sit down on that hill for 40 days? Where does it say here? Jonah was deeply grieved. Okay, where does it say here where he just sat down and waited? So the whale spat him out, cast Jonas on the dry land, and he said, rise, go to Nineveh. Jonas began to enter the city, and yet 3 days he'll be overthrown. So Jonah's pretty sure they wouldn't repent. He was like, oh, these guys are gonna, this is it. Like, my word will come true. Jonah was deeply grieved and he was confounded. He prayed to Yah, take my life from me. Take my life, just kill me. I want them to be punished. He went out from the city and sat over against So Jonah didn't realize that they turned. It was God that saw. It wasn't Jonah. He saw in their hearts. He could see they turned from evil. They really did repent. And Jonas was deeply grieved. He was confused. He was like, how come they're not being killed? Because it should have been 3 days, right? Because if he said 40 days, he wouldn't be confused that quickly. That would make sense, yeah. Jonah went out from the city and sat over against it. He made a booth. He sat under it. And he commanded a gourd. So this is probably day 1. And so day 1 is passed. So day 2, he left the city, said, you know what, let me just get out of the city. I need to just be away from it. He built a booth, and then God commanded a gourd, and then it died the next day. So that's day 2, the gourd. Day 3 is the worm eating the gourd. And that's where he complains. And God had pity on Nineveh. So yeah, it does sound like 3 days. Otherwise, 40 days, you can't just be sitting and waiting. Why would you just wait? Why would you sit and watch the city for 40 days and he doesn't have any food? I mean, what is Jonah eating for 3 days? He could survive without food for 3 days. Maybe he bought food. But for him to be up there for 40 days, he's going to wait 40 days. No, he waited 3 days. It actually makes more sense. It's just 3 days because he waited up there. So I'm going to say because he waited, he sat and watched. So you have bored, day 2 probably, and day 3 is the worm. I need to get out of the city. I mean, he waited a day. He thought, okay, this is going to happen today. It didn't happen. So it means it didn't happen not within an hour, but within the day. He thought it would happen within a day. Because he was waiting. And maybe 3 days passed. I don't know. But he waited. But why would he wait? So he watched. Could not have been 40 days of watching for 40 days. Where would he get the food, right? Where would he get the food? Where would he get the food? That's the first thing we should think of. Where would he get the food? Rations for 40 days. Unless he packed like a prepper. Oh, he didn't have that much food for 40 days to feed himself. And he fasted. Jonah was not fasting. It was the people, not him. He was not fasting. Notice he was not fasting. He didn't have to fast. Not required to fast. He was just required to give the message. If we use common sense, we can get to the resolution. And so it seems it is 3 days, not 40. So what did Yehoshua, what did Joshua, the anointed one, bring in terms of the spiritual understanding and practical application regarding this Arekh, long-suffering? What did he bring to the table? He verbalized at times, expressing, "O faithless generation, how long will I put up with you?" Right? He did say that. So Jesus, "O faithless generation, how much longer? How long must I put up with you?" I think he said it that way. I think that's what he said. I don't want to get around. That's why I'm fact checking. So we are right at the cusp of this presentation here. Faithless, unbelieving, and perverse generation. Matthew 17:17. And Mark as well. Okay, so there's 2. Let's look at both. Mark, Matthew first. Okay, Matthew first. Came in Mark for whatever reason. Once Cotton Hort does that to you, throws you a curveball. Matthew 9, Mark 9, not Matthew, Mark 9:19. It says here, "O faithless generation, how long must I be with you? How long must I have patience with you?" Wow. So he's showing patience. Wow, that's powerful. Okay, I'm going to look at the Matthew one. You really get a sense of the faith of Yeshua. He was so faithful because he knew where his power came from. Matthew 17:17. "O faithless and perverse generation, how long must I be among you? How long must I have patience with you? Bring the boy to me." So it's the same account. Because you have so little faith. For I tell you, if your faith were like a mustard seed, nothing would be impossible for you. Okay, I like Mark better, but let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at this in the source now. Let's look at Matthew. 17:17. You faithless and perverse group of people, how long will I be with you? How long do I have to put up with you? Bring him here to me. So he's putting up with people. That's Arekh. Why couldn't we throw it out? Because you don't have much faith. I mean, he's just telling them like straight up, you don't have faith. Much faith. Let me make this clear. If you had faith like a mustard seed, which is tiny, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. I think he's talking about nations, but empires. Because a mountain itself, I don't know. I mean, maybe he was talking about a literal mountain. That's a mystery. Mark 9. 9:19. Okay. Mark 9:19-21 says, you faithless group of people, how long am I going to be with you? How long do I have to put up with you for? Bring the boy over to me. You could just picture him sighing when he says this. So they brought him over. The spirit caused him to spasm. He fell on the ground, rolling around and foaming at the mouth. If you can, everything is possible to someone who believes. If you can do anything about it. To be more emphatic. Most emphatic. What? The vehemence of the word. What does vehemence mean? Okay, vehemence. What does vehemence mean? Vehemence. Most emphatic. So it's an emphatic. Energy, force, passion, intensity. So with intensity, with passion, he said, if you can. So saying with intensity. Wow. Makes sense. Yeah, he was in that. He was in that that mode where he was saying that you're faithless. How am I going to put up with you if you can? So he was like, you can see, like he's not angry, but he's showing that they need to step it up. But he wasn't angry with them. But he was saying that he is putting up with their faithlessness. He's putting up with that. Just long suffering is Arekh. Yeah, that's one way he showed it right here in this account of Mark. Mark, what is this? 9:17. So 17 to 24. Okay. Mark 9:17-24. Mark 9, Mark 9:17-24 source. Okay. 40 days and 40 nights. That was another one. The great test. We know about that. Fasting for 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. So let's fact check that too. Where did he fasted 40 days? Let's see where that is in the source, see if it says the same thing. When he fasted, Matthew, or okay. Let's look that up. Verse 2. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. He got hungry, but not thirsty. Someone said that he wasn't, maybe he drank water? I don't know. He said, turn these stones to bread, but it doesn't say let water come out of the stone. That's one thing that is notable. Because otherwise he would have said, just ask for water and make it rain or something. Yeah, someone asked this question here. It says, did he drink water during the fast? He fasted for 40 days. There are some individuals who have claimed the three Gospels are in disagreement, but a good trial lawyer would expect this to be the case. Each one reported different details. In a criminal trial, a trial would charge three witnesses with collusion if they reported the exact same thing. In fact, most trial lawyers are suspicious when all the witnesses give the exact same information. It becomes obvious their testimonies were coordinated. The beauty of the three Gospels, we get a fuller picture. So yeah, it says here, was there 40 days? Tempted by Satan, ate nothing, became hungry, fasted. So it doesn't say he did not, doesn't say he drank or did not. None of the Gospels say anything about him drinking water or sleeping. They do report that he fasted or did not eat. There are no comments about him drinking water. It appears he did drink water. Medical experts state the typical man or woman cannot live more than 10 days without water. However, some individuals have lived 21 days without water. How can we can live much longer without food? Yeah, that actually makes sense too. I didn't think that it was possible for a man to fast for 40 days. So, um, yeah, how long can a person live only on water? Okay, on fluids. Let's say I'm not saying he had a protein drink, but say he had some kind of like a smoothie. I know it sounds so weird. He should have had a smoothie. You know what I mean? Remember Daniel and his friends? They ate water and pulse. So maybe it was like a vegetable thing where they mixed it. And it was like a fluid, a liquid. I don't know. I would have said that too, but it didn't say he packed water. It didn't say he didn't pack water. Uh, yeah, how long on water alone? Yeah. How long can a person live on water alone? That's the question. Yeah, let's see this. You can't live on water alone, but you can try. It's not. Didn't that guy do it? What's his name? David Blaine. Didn't he do that? The water thing. I don't know. David Blaine is little. Anyway, can a human survive only in water? It's normal to be thirsty. Water makes up 65% of the body's liquid. Some people say it's more than that. So how can you live without water? They say 8 to 10 days. I've seen that before, at least 7 to 14 days. Um, so if you drink enough fluids beforehand, you could live 18 days without water. So according to a Chinese sailor, he survived 133 days without water. I doubt that. I seriously doubt that. He survived by eating fish and drinking the blood of a shark. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the water diet, here we go. So if you don't eat any food, just drink water, how long will you survive? This diet is another name for fasting. If you're healthy, a few days of fasting will not affect you, but this is still a bad idea. To lose weight, you will starve. You'll have to eat according to your normal eating patterns. Cold water diet. So it's water fasting. Okay, it doesn't tell us how long you can survive on only water. But I do remember people, yeah, some people lived on 30 days of just water. There was a report of a woman who was stuck in her car because it was frozen shut and she only survived on water for like, I think 2 weeks or a month. So that was wow. There's a report somebody lived on water for 12 years. Oh, these people are just really, I doubt that. I highly doubt that. So I'm not going to look at that. It's just ridiculous. 12 years in just water. Probably cheated at nighttime eat a bunch of noodles at night. Kind of person. Yeah, there are reports of people, woman stuck in car, ate ice for I think 30 days. I don't know. I think she was stuck in her car and she lived on ice. Yeah, but there are reports of people living on just water for 30 days. So, anyway, that's getting into another topic. I'm not going to go too off track. So, I'll just. So, he did not eat for 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. So, I'll just say did not eat because he certainly did not eat. That was a great test. And at the end of it, he faced the enemy, faced the final boss at the end of that test. He also said, if my kingdom were of this world, my angels would fight for me. Yeah, where's that? If my kingdom were of this world, where does that verse? Let's see. 1836. Okay. So John 1836. Write that down here. So I want to look up the Jesus fasted. Joshua the Anointed One fasted 40 days. Where does that say? So there are three accounts that here it is, Matthew 4. So we'll look at each account just to see what does it say regarding that fast. He fasted. He got hungry, not thirsty. So that's notable. He didn't say he was thirsty, just hungry, which might imply he did drink. What about Moses? Did he drink? If Moses drank, then you would have a better idea. Mark 1:12 to 13. He was in the desert 40 days being put through an ordeal. He was with the small wild animals. Wait, what? He was with small animals? Hunted for game opposed to wild animals and beasts of prey. So he was with rabbits and so on, and the messengers were providing for him. So they were giving him something. I don't know what they were giving him. So they ministered to him in some way to keep him alive. Luke 4. That's the assumption, is that they're helping him to stay safe. Maybe they gave him shade. I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, Luke 4. He was led in the desert by the Spirit. He was put through an ordeal for 40 days. He ate nothing. But it doesn't say he didn't drink. So he could have drunk. I didn't even think about that. Wow. Which means we could all do that. We could, I haven't fasted for the longest I fasted, I think, was 2 days. But I should try 3 days on just water and see what happens. I don't know what'll happen, but we'll see what happens. I'll have to eat a lot of food before I do that, though. But yeah, that's interesting. That's very, very interesting. Moses fasted 40 days. Let's see. If it says he did not drink, then I'm going to make the assumption that so did Joshua, the Anointed One, also did not. If Moses was said to not drink or eat, then I'm going to assume that's probably what happened with him as well. But whatever Moses did, he probably did. in terms of the fast here. 34, 28. And Moses was there before Yah 40 days and 40 nights. He did not eat bread, he did not drink water. Yeah, so it does say. So perhaps he did not, he did the same thing, probably didn't drink water either. That's my assumption because that's what Moses did. And most likely didn't do that as well. I think that's just maybe common sense, you could say. Because we're trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. Because how was he sustained? Well, he was in the presence of Yah, that's one thing. Exodus 34, what's the wrong book? Let's just see, was he thirsty? What happened to him that he didn't even feel hungry or thirsty? "34. He did not eat, he did not drink, he wrote upon the tables. When he went down, Moses knew not the appearance of his skin was glorified." I mean, the difference is Joshua, the anointed one, was not in the presence of Yah. He was Yah. He wasn't in the presence of Yah. He was Yah. But he was still in the flesh. But there's a difference when you are flesh and you're in the presence of Yah, like the spiritual glory that he has. So I don't know. All we can conclude is he didn't eat. Moses didn't eat or drink. So that is made, that's specified there. Okay, and the last scripture I have there is John 18. Okay, John 18, which is not in the Septuagint, so I don't know. I'm looking there. It's John 18:36. I got 3 hours to go. I should eat soon. 18, John 18, and then I'll do a rehearsal. Once I get to the end, I'll do a final rehearsal and see how this comes together. I don't know how it's sounding so far, but feels like it's a little all over the place. My realm is not from this world. If my realm were from this world, then my officers would have been fighting to the last to prevent me from being handed over to certain the Yehudim. To fight to the last. Not merely to fight, but they're going to fight to the last man. To contend. So they're going to compete. Where's this verse again? At 36. To prevent me from being handed over to certain Jews, Yehudim. But as a matter of fact, my realm isn't from here. And he also said to, don't you know I can send 12 legions of angels? I think that's the one I really want to. Don't you know I can, any moment, he said, at any time, 12 legions of angels. That's the one that really strikes me. When, whoa, that many? That's a lot. I mean, it's one thing to say they're going to fight for me, but it's another thing to say I can just get legions of angels, like boom, like out of thin air, well, not thin air, but immediately they'll fight. It's Matthew 26:53. Okay. That one stands out. That is like a what? It's like people would say, you're flexing, but he's not flexing, he's saying the truth. Put away your sword. Hasn't it occurred to you that I can pray right now to my Father? He'll provide me with more than 12 army divisions, each of 600 messengers. Oh, but then how would the scriptures be fulfilled? It has to happen like this. Wow. So he knew what the reality was, but he also had to show Arekh. He had to be like, it has to happen like this. That's Arekh in a way. It has to happen like this. He knows why he did it. It's not just for the prophecy, it's for love. It's for us. All time, for all of humanity, from Adam to the last person who will ever be born. I don't know if there ever be a last person to be born. Will there be an end to people being born? I don't know. That's an interesting question to ponder. I tell you. Okay, so 47 to 55. So there's quite a bit of reading here, but it's to prove a point. It's not just to read. Just going to read because I want to read. No. So I'm going to read Matthew instead of John. Matthew. Okay, there's a lot here in this Matthew. So 34 to 54. I'm going to read all of that. Matthew, what chapter is this? 26? Matthew 26. Okay, so I'm going to read a big chunk of Matthew. Just to prove a point. I think that just reading it, I don't even have to explain it really. It's self-explanatory. Like if that lesson is not conveyed in the reading of this, then not paying attention really. Matthew 26. And it's starting at 31 to 54. Just to illustrate what's going on here. So, yeah. So, yeah, the son would be to be betrayed, forsaken. And that's a lot to be forsaken by his disciples. You know, he abandoned them, he abandoned ship. Yeah, they fulfilled prophecy, but it was still kind of cowardly by his, I mean, I could say confidants, right? They could even say that. Disciples, his friends, so-called friends. I say so-called friends because, I mean, they weren't there. It was the women who stayed. Betrayed, abandoned, falsely accused, and beaten up. I mean, how much did he suffer, really? So much. So to see all that, witness all that for the Father, for the angels, and the Father, his Father, or certainly his Father. It's not his Father to witness all that, not to intervene because it's long suffering. I think they all three, the Father and the Son really embodied the epitome of long suffering. So I'm going to say both the Father and the Son um, experienced the epitome of Arekh, long suffering. They certainly suffered emotionally from this. They suffered emotionally and took a toll for sure. 2 Peter 1:6. Their virtues which may parallel the fruit of the Spirit. Yeah, actually, that's its own presentation. That's not for this. It's another. I'll give you another presentation. So I'm not going to include that. That's actually too much now. So I'm going to put that. Put here some additions. Present those additions. E.g., i.e., brotherly affection. I think I don't know anymore. Okay. So I'm almost done here. This is quite lengthy. I might have to shorten it. I'm at, how many pages is this now? Got 14 pages. So 1 Timothy 1, how Yeshua showed this to the Apostle Paul. Okay, how did he show it to him? This Arekh. 1 Timothy 1 and verse 16. You can see how it was shown to him. It was this reason I was shown mercy, so that I could be example of one to whom the Anointed One would show great tolerance, a pattern sketched out. Okay, so that's tolerance. It's not so much Arekh. So I'm going to delete that. It's more tolerance, but let me just look it up in here and see if it's rendered a little differently. Maybe I could still use that if it's rendered more in the line of long suffering than tolerance. Because yeah, Arekh does kind of include tolerance a little bit, doesn't it? I don't know, does it? We'll see. Timothy. If I can find Timothy, where are you, Timothy? Hebrews. Ephesians. Oh, there's Timothy. Right after Philippians in this one. 1 Timothy 1:16 says, mercy was shown me for the express purpose that Christ Jesus might exhibit my case beyond all others his exhaustless patience. So exhaustless, some people say perfect long suffering, I think. So it's forbearance, tolerance, patience. I mean, yeah, it could be used hypothetically. I mean, let's look at the King James, 1 Timothy. Here it is, 1 Timothy. It's a bit easier to find here. It says, might show forth all long suffering for a pattern. So it does say long suffering there. Here it's rendered in the Westcott and Hort. is exhaustless patience. And some translations say perfect long suffering. Because of what he did before. Here it says, I was shown mercy. He could show great tolerance. I am the foremost sinner. He says, I'm the foremost sinner. He's not, is he exaggerating? I don't know, but he's saying that. Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, and there's no greater sinner than I. Exhaustless patience. So he demonstrated that in Paul's life. That's the way he understood it. That he was shown this directly from the Anointed One. I could be an example of one to who the Anointed One could show great tolerance, or Arekh. So 15 to 16. Okay. 1 Timothy 1, 15, 16. And that's the source. Okay. So when we consider long suffering in terms of the Old Testament, it can't be limited by looking only to human examples. But when we consider the long suffering of Yah in the Old Testament, we see a consistent thread in both the New and Old. New Testaments. And made even more profound. This is made even more profound by the suffering, by what Yeshua did. Yeah. In regards to people around us, it's being patient. Arekh means being patient or spiritually or physically blind, sick, and poor. Those outside the faith, even those in the faith. So blind, you can see or understand a specific truth. So let's say, for example, we keep the Sabbath, but we don't keep the holy days, or they don't. Say a person is new to the faith, and they only know the truth about Sabbath, but they are not keeping the holy days. They don't know or keep the holy days yet. And then the food laws, baptism, can keep progressing. People can be spiritually sick because we know the truth, but we understand it, but we're not able to do it. So either that's because of outside forces or our own weakness. that we are struggling to overcome. And be spiritually poor, so we have the spirit, but we are not, but we are lacking. So I'm rich in one area, for example, maybe I'm rich in long suffering, so I don't get angry quickly. I get angry long. I'm long tempered, but my self control, like when it comes to sleeping and waking up, is lacking. So I could be poor in self control. Okay, so that's just a brief thing. It can be said the fruit of the spirit are the attributes of Yah. Again, I keep repeating this, but it is such a poignant statement. These are not simply things we should do, like suggestions, but these are specific things. Should adopt specific character, character, specific character um, traits we should become, but our specific character traits. Our specific character, our specific characteristics we should become are to be like He is, like God is, set apart, to be like He is. Let's say to be like God is, to be like He is. Exercise long suffering with ourselves and with God, meaning we don't get frustrated and give up on on keeping on continuing to overcome our own challenges within ourselves and those outside ourselves. We don't give up on the journey of faith. It is a progression. We don't give up on the end goal, eternal life in the kingdom of our Father. So Arekh, how do I say it? Long suffering, patience, and something else. Okay, so that's it. I think I forgot that last word, whatever that is. I'll just look it up really quick here. It says it means three things. What are those three? Slow to anger, patience, and long suffering. Okay. Slow to anger, patience, and long suffering. So Arekh, long nose, long nose, long tempered. I mean, people say endurance is another one too. I mean, this can get really, really, really deep, but I'm just going to kind of keep it more focused on the slow to anger aspect and long suffering aspect. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to do a new stream and go over this. 2 hours and 45 minutes. Okay.